Studio B for Strange Universe. In Studio Strange Universe.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
Are you a fan of rock and roll? Does it get your feet tapping and your hands clapping? Then be sure to check out Crip Rick's Rock and Roll Hour every Friday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern and Standard Time on Studio B right here at revolutionradio.com, where we get down and talk all things rock.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop, and you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Revolution Radio.
Tune into Revolution Radio. Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio. Tune into Revolution Radio, Studio A for Omnium Gatherum, a kaleidoscope of discussion, Thursdays at 4 p.m. and Saturdays at 10 p.m. only at Revolution Radio.
The spice extends life. The spice expands consciousness. The spice is vital to space travel.
And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future, precisely. And in here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us as we endeavor to treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. This is the voice of the revolution. And we are streaming to you live with our good friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.org, the #1 listener-supported network in the entire country. We're also streaming to you live on many video platforms on Rumble and YouTube and Twitch, DLive, X, Truth Refugee, and Foxhole. So everywhere where good podcasting can be found live and free. Let's see. Wow, chat room is already filling up. Wow, I have to scroll way up here. Let's see. Gramanon is here. Big D 1955. I try to acknowledge all my listeners that come in early. East Coast 20. Boy Dogs 2 is here. JCW is here. Let's see. Ammon T223. Freedom is here off of YouTube. This is good. Yeah, I would like to see the Dodgers beat the Brewers. Why not? I mean, I'm from LA. I want to see that happen. Tatanka Dave is here. Stanley Mays, Ann Coates, Washaki Wind. Let's see. Who else is here? Boo is here. Let's see. JCF Engel is here. This is good. DC Lixby is here. Is that right? Have we got that right? Yeah, that's a new one. Michigan. That's good. We need all the Michiganders we can get. Della Meow is here. K.O. Kelly out in Vegas. This is good. How many on Foxhole? Foxhole's not populating yet, but it will. It will. Pool Dude has just popped in. This is good. We'll siphon some more over. It's early yet. But a lot of stuff is happening. So, and by the way, I apologize for not being here on Sunday. Not really my fault. Ran over a road hazard, popped a hose on my truck. That's where I was. Had to have it towed. It was no fun. I wanted to be here with you, but that's the way it goes. One of those rare opportunities when something takes me out and I'm not able to be here with you. So one of the big things in the news, really, I think it's the biggest thing that's been happening consistently, besides all the Antifa antics. I think that's just kind of fun and games. They're going to think that until they pay those $5,000 fines and realize they got to put in a couple hundred hours of community service. It's not going to be a fun time for them. It's not a popular time to be out there protesting ICE. And besides, one of the reasons for being out there that people have been using has been they're pro-Hamas. Now that the peace deal's been signed, there's no Hamas. So all those Palestinian flags, those really expensive Palestinian flags, they probably cost about $200-300 a piece. Who's buying them all? That's what we really want to know, isn't it? But they're all worthless now. Nobody cares about that stuff now. So they have to kind of switch gears if they want to stay out there. So I'm not really going to cover too much of that tonight. What I want to cover is I did some research into this because I don't know if you guys know this or not. I certainly haven't heard it on the news. Nobody really wants to go into it. It's a bunch of dry gobbledygook unless you listen to it on this program. And the question is, how powerful really is the reign of the judges? I mean, we've heard about it throughout history for thousands of years. The reign of the judges has taken down nation after nation after nation. This not body of law, but these law officials sort of take the law into their own hands, and they bludgeon the people, they bludgeon the elected officials until the whole thing falls apart. And it very rarely, except in the case of President Bukele's case in El Salvador, does the leader have the courage and the resolve, because it takes resolve. You're going to get some rule of law. Nobody's above the law. Oh, every kind of coinage you can think of, backlash on it. But you got to go in there and you got to impeach these rogue judges, or you lose your country. Bukele showed the way. The president of Argentina showed the way. Whether or not we follow, it remains to be seen. So, how powerful is the reign of the judges? Well, here's the gist of it. There are 94 district courts in the 50 states, District of Columbia, Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and the territories of Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Northern Mariana Islands. The United States district courts, and you have to understand why they have these district courts, is because in the original setting up of the Supreme Court was to hear all these cases. Well, obviously they couldn't ride everywhere and hear all those cases. So Congress built a court for them, all right, gave them certain keys and certain responsibilities and certain rights to be able to adjudicate on behalf of the court. And that's where the problem immediately arises. It began with Judge Roy Bean, I guess, and got worse. So most federal cases are initially tried and decided in these courts. Most of them, I'd say more than 95%. And how many are there? How many judges are there? Well, there are 677 authorized Article III district court judgeships nationwide. That's it. People were thinking, oh, there must be thousands of them. It's out of control. It's like an army of them. Nope, only 677 of them. And believe it or not, the mix is pretty even as far as Republican, Democrat, Independent, blah, blah, blah. So Trump supporters in Congress have raised the specter of impeaching these judges, impeaching these rogue judges, the ones who constantly are attacking the administration. You know about it. I know about it. Some people are way for it. Some people are like, I don't know. That's kind of opening Pandora's box. If we impeach theirs, they impeach ours. And then next thing you know, we don't have a court system. I understand all that. But Elon Musk ended up in the crosshairs of much of the litigation, which is regularly called for removing judges on his social media site. And that has some effect. You get into this, ref shaming. You know what I'm talking about? Ref shaming, when you're watching a live basketball game and the ref is making bad calls one after the other. And you shame the ref. Hey, what are you doing? You're playing for the other side. You just shame them. And then what happens is they'll become hypersensitive to it, and they'll either straighten up or they'll do something opposite. But you have an effect as the John Q. public on what the judges are doing. Of course, when it comes to basketball, you don't really have to worry about the ref having a daughter or a nephew or a son or a sister or a brother or even a wife with an NGO that's receiving millions of dollars from the government to run the opposition, and it matters what decision you make in court as to whether that NGO makes any money or not, which ultimately decides whether you get that bass boat or not. You know what I'm saying? Not so much in basketball, definitely in the federal court. And these conflicts of interest are not rare at all. So today, And the reason why I bring this up today, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, reacted furiously to a Washington judge's order halting the deportations under 18th century wartime law that Trump invoked hours earlier. I think this happened a few Sundays back, as a matter of fact. Grassley said, another day, another judge unilaterally deciding policy for the whole country, this time to benefit foreign gang members. If the Supreme Court or Congress doesn't fix, we're headed toward a constitutional crisis. Yeah, I think we're pretty much there. Supreme Court has already come out and said, look, guys, I know you wear the robes. I know you have this little mallet. And we're going to leave all that well enough and alone. But you got to stay inside your own lane, folks. All right? There's 677 of you. Each one of you has a district. Damn it, stay in your own district. No more of these universal injunctions. No more of these temporary restraining orders that extend beyond your district. Well, they didn't listen. They didn't listen worth a damn. So how hard is it? How tough is it really? Well, it would take 2/3 of the U.S. Senate to remove an impeached judge. You know that ain't happening, right? You know that ain't happening. With only 53 Republicans in the chamber, it's highly unlikely that the supermajority would be reached. The Trump administration, though, has expressed exasperation at the frequency with which the lower courts are ruling against it. And this is a kind of a general statement. So I did some research to find out. I like quantification. I like quantitative analysis. Data, reliable, repeatable, anyone can find it. He said, we have a major malfunction in one part of our federal judiciary. Judges who abuse their power with nationwide injunctions that target President Trump to stop him from advancing the policies the American people elected him to carry out, which is true. When the government was formed as a republic, it was designed to be a representative republic, but it was the ultimate representative is the president. Now, obviously, two parties precipitated out of what made up the government at the time. It became a two-party system, not patriots and traitors the way Jefferson originally thought, but anti-federalists and federalists. And the difference is that the anti-federalists didn't like a strong president. They didn't want an executive running things. They didn't want one person that everybody votes on that sort of becomes the voice of the people. They didn't want that. What they wanted was a bureaucracy. They were anti-federalists. They didn't like a strong single leader. What they wanted was a bureaucracy, something that moved slowly and lethargically, something they could control from behind the scenes with sludge and blood and bribery. That's the kind of government that they wanted. The Federalists, which were the Republicans, they wanted a strong executive. They knew that the Washington, the Jefferson, the strong executive is what keeps America's enemies at bay. And it also inspires its people, because its people can rally behind one guy, a captain, a president, a leader, charismatic or otherwise, and can get great things done, can conquer enemies, and can solve problems that bureaucracies cannot solve. So various formulae have been applied to make it at least more difficult for these temporary restraining orders to be issued by these rogue judges. They always find a way around it because there are court precedents that allow them to open a different can and pour out a different tint into the argument. At issue, basically, are, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way, I don't want you to take it the wrong way. At issue are the foreign-born judges, okay? The foreign-born judges who appear to be financially motivated to block the U.S. president from governing. And that appearance is so stark that the average person can see it. And when the average person can see it, that's called the appearance of evil. What we want to try to do is avoid the appearance of evil, right? We want to trust our court. We want to, even though the robes are black, we don't want them to be soiled or magic or dark in any way. We want it to be transparent and open, right? Well, that's not what's happening. Right now, this is crazy. I know you're going to find these numbers stunning. There are a stunning 443 judgments against Trump at this moment. More than twice as many as all the other presidents combined throughout history. More than twice. It's a concerted, like, what did Trump say today? What did he sign today? What judge can we assign it to stop it? That's basically what's happened. We formed this judicial cartel, and that's what we're witnessing. But Trump's acting Solicitor General, Sarah Harris, argued to the Supreme Court that federal district judges have no authority to issue sweeping orders that block policies nationwide. Hence, Harris suggested, an injunction should apply only in the geographic district where the judge is located, or only to the specific individuals of the group that's being sued. Well, obviously, that's not the case, right? It covers everywhere, everybody that's affected. It's universal. You know, it's expanded to the point where the president can't move. Let's see. She says, years of experience have shown that the executive branch cannot properly perform its functions if any judge anywhere can enjoin every presidential action everywhere. Makes sense to me. Makes sense to you. Yes. She contended that while administrations of both parties have lamented the practice, it has reached epidemic proportions during Trump's current term. We're not talking about a dozen or 2 dozen. We're talking hundreds and hundreds of decisions. The United States District Court for D.C., the source of many of the cases interfering with President Donald Trump's authority, has 15 judges. And that counts James Boasberg. You know who he is, right? The really tall Uncle Fester looking guy. And guess what? Of the 15, 33% of them were born outside the United States. Shake your head for a second. What the hell are you talking about? We have 330 something million people in this country, no shortage of lawyers or judges. I can guarantee you that. But 30% of our judges are foreign born. That is to say, they're serving on the court with an ideology from another country. How can that be? But it is. The country of origin doesn't come up in most jobs. It is worth asking if judges with ties to foreign nations and cultures are the right ones to make decisions affecting the U.S. military or immigration, right? It's like I always said about Kamala Harris. Holy crap. Here's a woman that was born to non-U.S. citizens. Neither one of them was a U.S. citizen. One was an Indian, one was a Jamaican. And she was then removed from this country by her mother, who had divorced her father, to Canada, where she was raised. Okay, so that's 3 countries, none of which are America, involved in the raising of Kamala Harris. So, God forbid we should ever go to war with India like that. I don't think that would ever happen. But if it did, where would Kamala's allegiance lie? What if we went to war with Jamaica? Where would her allegiance lie? We don't know. What about Canada? Same thing. That's the reason why we make sure that presidents are natural born in the United States. They're born to at least one U.S. citizen inside this country and live their lives inside this country. And I would like to think no dual citizenship. That would really mess things up, wouldn't it? But not like it happens in Senate, Congress, whatever. But this is what it's about. It's about allegiance. It's about loyalty, right? Well, when you slip your body into that magic black robe and you grab that very powerful wooden mallet and you swing it, you could do any damn thing you want, even if it's in total violation of what the president is trying to accomplish. Especially if your wife or daughter or nephew or niece or your son happens to run a NGO or a nonprofit that's receiving millions of dollars that depends upon the judgments that you make. So you have to stop President Trump. Otherwise, you're not going to get that summer vacation. Your kids aren't going to go to Harvard. That kind of thing comes to bear. So here's the thing that I want you to think about, the concept of a foreign-born judge. Now, I don't think you have to be a lawyer or even have been a judge, although I think it would be nice to know the ropes. You just have to be a person of good report, right? A farmer, a bus driver, a school teacher, a school superintendent, a principal, somebody, from the community that's American. That's American. But this concept is really a new phenomenon. And it's really, really been pushed overboard. By the way, in addition to the 15 main judges in D.C., they have 10 older senior judges who still occasionally hear cases in the district. And this group, nominated as far back as, well, I guess you go back to the Ronald Reagan days. That's how long they have sat on the bench. Very well respected. Guess what? Every single one of them is born in the U.S. All of them. All of them. But starting in 2014, yes, I know Barack Obama was president. Starting in 2014, Judge Tanya Sue Chutkan, born in Kingston, Jamaica, she was in the U.S. by 1979, attended George Washington University. Before sitting on federal court, she had no experience as a judge. Zero. Chutkan is overseeing the legal challenge to DOJ's work to slash excess government spending. She's not loyal to the United States of America. She's not loyal to the U.S. She's loyal to whoever put her on that court, Barack Obama. Obama also appointed Judge Amit P. It looks like Mehta, M-E-H-T-A, to the D.C. court. And Mehta also had no previous experience as a judge, born in Patan, Gujarat, India. And his parents came to the U.S. when he was a baby, age 1. He was raised in Maryland. Mehta will oversee 4 January 6th civil cases that aim to blame Trump for injuries and squeeze money, court time, and political embarrassment out of him. The other 3 foreign-born judges were nominated by former President Joe Biden. Judge Ana Cecilia Reyes was nominated in 2021. Also, no experience as a judge. Zero. Nada. She was born in Montevideo, Uruguay, and moved to Spain. And while a child, moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where she grew up. She is the first openly LGBT Latina to be appointed to the court. Well, there's a couple of boxes marked there, isn't it? Reyes presided over an objection to Trump's executive order declaring gender dysphoria and inconsistent with the high standards for troop readiness. As the Federalist's Sean Fleetwood reported, Reyes blocked Trump's order with a preliminary injunction. Do you think she had a conflict of interest? She's gay, and she made a gay decision, not a U.S. decision, not a legal decision. Her opinion. Hang on a second. Mouth's a little dry. The first Muslim Arab American in the D.C. District Court, Judge Amir Hatem Mahdi Ali, born and raised in Canada to Egyptian parents. According to his questionnaire for judicial nominees, Ali was not required to register for the U.S. Selective Service, the draft, and that is because he wasn't a citizen. He wasn't a citizen until 2019. Graduated from the University of Waterloo in Ontario, Canada, with a software engineering degree in 2008, and then attended Harvard Law School in the U.S., graduating with a law degree in 2011. He worked as a volunteer. Guess where? No, not that kind of volunteer. He worked on Biden's campaign, his 2020 transition team. Yeah, and for a phone bank in support of Biden's presidential campaign. Yeah, he really has the experience, huh? It's not my fault. Hold the line, please. It's not my fault. Hold the line, please. It's not my fault. Hold the line, please. A phone bank. He worked for some nonprofits, but he never served as a judge until Biden appointed him in 2024. And Amir has written extensively and negatively about Trump's so-called travel ban, Muslim travel ban, a 2017 executive order which restricted travel to the U.S. from 7 predominantly Muslim countries for 90 days. And these were countries that had no governments. They had no functioning governments. They had no way to vet the people that they were putting on the planes and sending to the United States. So he banned travel for them. Now, yes, they're predominantly Muslim, but that wasn't why he banned them. He banned them because there was no organized government. There was no organized government, no record keeping. We didn't know who these people were. In his writing, Mr. Amir said prejudice and intolerance were the very hallmark of Trump's campaign against Muslims. Really now? Really? Prejudice and intolerance. I see. Before he was a judge, Ali spoke at the National Press Foundation and gave tips to reporters on how to cover the courts. When confirmed, Amir was a member of the Capital Area Muslim Bar Association, Muslim American Judicial Advisory Council, National Arab American Bar Association, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, National Police Accountability Project, and the Native American Bar Association of D.C., among others. Mr. Ali single-handedly restored $2 billion in U.S. aid spending to foreign nonprofit contractors that the Trump administration had paused for 90 days in a stunning overreach of authority last month. The newest judge on the D.C. District Court is also, guess what, foreign-born. Before slinking out of office, Biden and his handlers got Judge Sparkle Spooknanan confirmed, and she was sworn in on January 2nd, 2025, born in the dual island nation Trinidad and Tobago in 1983. She left her home country age at 16 to pursue college and graduated from Brooklyn Law School in 2010. She was a law clerk for Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, and during the Biden administration, she was the principal deputy assistant attorney general in the Civil Rights Division for the Department of Justice before Biden tapped her for the first ever judge gig in the D.C. court. Yeah. And we don't know if it was the auto pen or if it was Biden. I suspect it was a total DEI hire from the auto pen, because we're talking 2025. Biden's mind is gone. And last week, Spooknanon dutifully did her part to slow up Trump's agenda, ordering the reinstatement of Democrat Susan Grundmann to the Federal Labor Relations Authority, a move that keeps the board in a Democrat majority. Now, none of these cases, none of them have gone in front of the conservative judges in conservative states. Missouri, South Dakota, They all happen to land in the laps of judges that have spoken out or ruled against Trump or his policies in the past. Out of all the judges in the nation, all 5 foreign-born judges of the D.C. District Court managed to get their fingerprints on the controversial Trump case. All 5. The United States is in the midst of a soft coup. We're watching it. We're seeing it happen. In the first term, it was impeach, impeach, impeach. It was Russia, 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 right? In this one, they don't have that. So they're relying on a judicial cartel to do their dirty work. Not the violent kind that takes out a nation's leader, although they certainly have tried to do that twice at least, but one orchestrated by judicial actions that choke off executive power right in front of our eyes. Right in front of our eyes. Even though the Supreme Court says, you can't do that. Well, we're doing it anyway. We're doing it anyway. Try to stop us. And we've seen other obvious corrupt schemes in plain sight before. The Biden basement presidential campaign of 2019, the insurrection that wasn't, the mask and vaccine mandates, which we will never forgive and we will never forget, and the Biden is mentally incompetent story, the flawless Afghan withdrawal that ended up with 13 dead Americans, the secure borders, which weren't, and the incompetent candidate swap to Kamala Harris. Nobody voted, and yet they moved all the money and moved the nomination, and the Democrats said, what? Wait, what just happened? Yeah. It made Americans realize the best chance we have is to stop corruption by voting it out. And I need to impress upon you today, Earth Explorers, that all this could end. All this could end in about 12 months, a little more than 12 months. All you have to do is vote these assholes out of office. That's all you have to do. Yeah, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Swalwell, all these guys, they're up for election. You don't have to worry about Nadler retiring or Pelosi retiring. Vote them out. Vote them out. You could do it. You have the power to do it anytime you want. We don't need term limits. We don't have to have a convention of states. We don't have to do any of that bullshit. Just vote them out of office. So simple. It's so simple. All you have to do is do it. The only remedy now is for the Supreme Court to step in, and this time it's got to get its hands a little dirty. It's got to be deliberate, and it's got to make real decisions based on the Constitution, or we lose it all. We lose it all. The reign of the judges destroys our republic. Federal judges in Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, they issued nationwide injunction preventing federal agencies from carrying out Trump's birthright citizenship order anywhere in the country. And we've already explained to you about birthright, how it was developed, why it was put in, what Federalist Papers were written about. You understand that a natural-born citizen means that the 14th Amendment was specifically written for, and it means that children of slaves were U.S. citizens. Now, that was modified since then to include children of Native Americans, because there for a while, children of Native Americans were not considered U.S. citizens. And then later, in a case that involved a Chinese marriage, and I know this is fairly modern, but you may not remember it, but birthright only went with the father. So if you had a woman, let's say, who was a U.S. citizen, and she married a British citizen here in the United States, and they had a child. And then that child was not a U.S. citizen by birth because it wasn't born to the father who was a U.S. citizen, because he wasn't a U.S. citizen. It was born to the mother. And if they get divorced, the child loses that U.S. citizenship. Well, there was a lawsuit, and they won the lawsuit, and now children of women, American women, are U.S. citizens. Okay? So if you're already an American citizen and you have a child, your child is automatically a U.S. citizen. That's the extent of birthright citizenship. Seriously. And that's including all the court precedents, everything. So what happened? What happened? How come anybody that comes over the border and drops a kid, that kid's automatically a U.S. citizen? Well, the Democrats began doing this as a precedent. They just began issuing Social Security numbers to babies that were dropped to tourists. And so Chinese women and Korean women and Japanese women would come to the United States 8 months pregnant, check into a luxury hotel, finish their pregnancy, have the baby, get the Social Security number, gather everything up, move back to their home countries, and then later, when that child's 18 years old, move that child back to the U.S. as a U.S. citizen and bring the extended family with him. It's called chain migration. And Barack Obama just ate it up. And of course, they got a lot of Democrat registrants. And that's where it came from. So Trump is rightly saying that's not what the 14th Amendment was for. And that's not what makes a U.S. citizen. And so he put an end to birthright citizenship. And immediately, within minutes, one of these foreign-born judges jumped in and said, no. No, we're going to give these people citizenship no matter what. And these nationwide universal injunctions prevent the government from enforcing the law or regulation or an executive order or policy across the entire United States, not just that district, not just the specific district that federal judge resides in or has jurisdiction over. In recent decades, nationwide injunctions have grown more common and have been issued to halt the policies of presidents of both parties. It's true, but not like Trump, not 443 decisions. As I said, more than twice as many for Trump than all the other presidents combined. In response to court orders against Trump's birthright citizenship executive order, the Department of Justice asked the Supreme Court to undo the universal relief granted by judges and to limit their orders to only the specific plaintiffs who are identified in the lawsuits. It doesn't affect everybody, just those plaintiffs. In its emergency application to the Supreme Court, the Trump administration asked justices not to consider the underlying merits of the executive order, whether it violates the Constitution, but to instead only answer whether the judges have the constitutional authority to issue the nationwide injunctions. It turns out they don't. Clarence Thomas questioned if nationwide injunctions are necessary, saying the country survived until the 1960s without them. We don't need them. And Justice Samuel Alito questioned whether reining in the nationwide injunctions goes far enough. asking Solicitor General John Sauer whether state plaintiffs in the case have standing to challenge Trump's executive order. They do not. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor asked the government, how can judges expeditiously stop presidents from carrying out clearly unconstitutional acts that affect tens of millions of people across the country if they cannot use nationwide injunctions? In other words, how can we take political action as a Supreme Court justice or as a district judge if this process is not allowed? The answer, Sonia, is you don't. You don't get to take political action. That's the reason why the president is elected. That's why you go by the mandate that he has. When 100 million people say to Trump, stop this practice, there's no basis in law for it, and he stops it, you can't have a judge take a political action just because Sonia says, well, they got to have this power or we can't take the political action. You know, as a hypothetical, she said, a future president could revoke the Second Amendment and confiscate people's guns. Americans as a whole wouldn't have a way to prevent the unconstitutional act until a lawsuit reached the Supreme Court, she said. But that particular one says shall not be infringed. It's much more clear language than the 14th Amendment. Justice Alina Kagan, asked Sauer whether limiting nationwide injunctions would create an incentive for the government to never appeal to the Supreme Court if the government loses in the lower courts, but is still able to carry out acts against the people who didn't file the lawsuits. In other words, people not in that district. Why would the government give the Supreme Court a chance to issue a final ruling on the constitutionality of the action, she asked. That's a reasonable argument, I think. And Action Jackson, who's made some terrifically wild statements today, oh my gosh. She asserted that Black people are handicapped and cannot figure out how to vote. And so they need their own voting district based on race. What? Yeah. Black people are handicapped, which is the most racist thing I've ever heard any official ever say in my entire life. Black people are handicapped. And so they have to have their own special voting district because obviously everybody knows that unless the person's Black that's being elected, they can't possibly represent Black people. Well, that's also the most racist thing I've ever heard. Why can't a white person represent Black people? No reason whatsoever. No reason whatsoever. Why don't white people elect Black people, even if they're Democrats in office? Because they know exactly what happens. Black people make decisions that favor Black people. Look at the judge that released Mr. Now I have to change gears really fast. The murderer of Irina Zarudska, okay, the Black guy, stood up in the bus, not the bus, but the blue line on the train, and stabbed her to death. He was in jail. 24 times he was in jail. He shouldn't have been released. The magistrate that released him was doing it because he promised to attend her for-profit, well, her non-profit, but she made money doing it, halfway house or kind of a training center for guys just like him, repeat offenders, repeat violent offenders. But he murdered before he had a chance to even come in. And guess what she did? She did it again today. She released a woman who stabbed 2 people and left them for dead. She was arrested. She was in jail. She was arrested. She was in jail for attempted murder. Now, the people survived, but holy crap. She stabbed them and left them for dead. Well, she's been released again. again, this is a setup for, because these people are going to reoffend. They're going to reoffend. And when they do, somebody's going to die. Some white person is going to die at their hands, and it's going to be her fault. So Ketanji Brown Jackson, I call her Action Jackson, she makes a statement today that black people are handicapped and they can't vote properly. They don't have access to voting the way white people do, which is the most insane thing I ever heard in my life. And so therefore they need their own district. They need their own district by color, by race, which is slightly unconstitutional, I would say. But anyway, she made the argument. But she asked whether doing away with nationwide injunction would require everyone to hire a lawyer and file lawsuits if the government is violating people's rights. Your argument seems to turn our justice system, in my view at least, into a catch me if you can kind of regime, she said, where everyone has to have a lawyer and file a lawsuit in order for the government to stop violating people's rights. I see that point because the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations write regulations that have the force of law, but we have no representation in that government, so that is a form of tyranny. In fact, it's the purest form of tyranny. And if these regulations hurt us or hurt our business or prevent us from doing commerce, we have to hire a lawyer and we have to go sue that bureaucracy, which 9 times out of 10, they're immune from lawsuits anyway. So I see her point, but that's the way our system works. If you're wronged by the government, you go to the court system and prove the wrong in court, and then they correct it. Sotomayor weighed in on the merits of Trump's order, saying that it likely violates the Constitution of 4 Supreme Court precedents. Based on the questions, it is less clear how Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Neil Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett are leaning on the scope and use of nationwide injunctions. I wonder too, because in a way it gives the court, it gives officers of the court immense power. And usually when somebody in the government gets their hands on power, have you ever seen them let it go? Have you ever seen them say, wow, I have my grips on this really great power, but I shouldn't have it, so I'm going to release it? No. They grab onto it and they hold onto it, and they hold onto it for generations, and they establish precedent to make sure they hold onto it. So, therein lies the problem. Now, the oral argument comes after months of Republicans admonishing rogue activist judges, hamstringing Trump's agenda. The people voted for this, and they're not being allowed to have it. Not because of Congress, not because of the Senate. We control both of those, except for the filibuster, but because of the judges. They've also denounced nationwide injunctions as unconstitutional and have taken legislative steps to restrict their use. And that's really the right way to do it. If Johnson and his crew can put together laws, because we're talking about Congress, and this is the body by which the court gets their power anyway. Congress created the court. Congress can dissolve the court if it wants to. It can certainly alter it, change it, or regulate it in some way. Tatanka Dave brings up a good point. He puts a little blunt, the ballot or the bullet. I say justice. If we don't get justice, we always go to conflict or to war. And the public is asking for justice in this. Now, the House Republicans last month passed a bill that would limit the scope of an injunction ordered by district judges to only the parties before the court. You remember that, right? That was a big deal. We thought, all right, we won. And the headlines were everywhere. Trump won another one. And Grassley was behind that. But the use of the nationwide injunction didn't slow down. In fact, it increased. It went up, right? It blasted away, especially since the start of his second term. As of March, court had issued at least 17 nationwide injunctions against Trump administration. It's also the case that Trump, after returning to the White House, has embarked on an unprecedented effort to expand presidential power primarily through unilateral executive orders. It is a quick way to get things done. It still has to go through the regular process, and these executive orders do not affect you or me. They only affect the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations. That's why they're called executive orders. Trump's issued far more executive orders in the first 100 days in the White House than any other president in modern history. He has, and this is not his second term, this is his third term. His first term, he was in the White House. His second term, he was in exile. And all of these executive orders were stacking up because he wasn't in the White House. Now he's in the White House. They just bring him in, and he's signing them from his second term. Biden was absent. Federal judges are ruling against Trump's policies, using the nationwide injunctions. This is kind of tit for tat. We write an executive order, you write an injunction. We write an executive order, you write an injunction. Republicans over the past 4 years extensively sought and received nationwide injunctions against then President Joe Biden's policies, especially those related to immigration. Did he stop? No. It kept going on and on and on, and that's why we're paying the price right now with the deportations. Over the years, Democrats too have taken issue with individual federal judges being able to halt executive branch initiatives nationwide. You recall when President Obama tried to give out, over 100,000 green cards, and they were in the process of writing them and sending them out. The Department of Labor had them done. And it took Ted Cruz and 23 states filing lawsuits in the Supreme Court to stop him from doing it. And I still think he got about 10,000, 20,000 of those things out there. We're paying a big price for that too. It's a big deal. Let's see what else. Oh, okay. The routine issuance of universal injunctions is patently unworkable. You know it, and I know it. It sows chaos for the litigants, for the government, the courts, everybody, and all those affected by the conflicting decisions. It just cannot continue, and I hope that the Supreme Court steps up and puts a stop to it, or at least makes it to where these temporary restraining orders cannot be used as a weapon by a judicial cartel, which is generally what we're seeing formed here. Remember, there aren't that many federal judges, and we have about 30% of the ones, at least in D.C., that are foreign-born. This is the area of conflict. This is the area of where the global syndicate is getting its biggest bang for the buck. Yes, and that also is coming up. Don't forget, I think it's the 18th, if I remember right. The Hate America Riots. Anyway, we'll cover more of this when we get back. Don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this. I promise you're going to enjoy it.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Tune in to the Family Industrial Complex podcast here on Revolution Radio, Studio B, every Wednesday, 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Get fit, empowered, physically, mentally, and spiritually.
The rooster has crowed out the opening bars of a new day. You've dragged yourself out of bed. You turn on your device. You want to know what's going on in the world. But you're hungry for a topical show that serves up those breakfast headlines just that little bit differently. Do you like your early morning news the way you like your eggs over easy? Served with slathers of salsa-like sass? Do you like those first headlines of the day to deliver a punch as powerful as that first cup of joe? Join Mitchell Bupp at his breakfast table for Revolution in the Morning, where he will digest, dissect, and dismantle those new day's national and global news headlines with razor-sharp relish. Find Mitchell here at revolution.radio every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on Studio B.
Through everything, we have to remember that we have more in common than not in common. And to find this common ground, tune in to Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio A. Because we come to this table of life to learn in the best possible way and experience this gift of life from our mutual Creator. So let's learn together and build our best future with Conversations with Eagle Flower, Wednesdays, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio.
I will defend myself against their tyranny. Number 3 is my radio broadcast. I'm squarely in front of the public all the time, and they all know what's going on.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
Hello, my name is John Wayne, and I do a broadcast here at freedomslips.com, revolution.radio, called The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
Freedom and fear are at war.
And folks, I assure you, we are in Defense Condition 1, as we journey perilously through this paradigm that we currently reside in. And I ask that you join me every Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for The Unequivocal Truth, DEFCON 1.
We'll never surrender.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for hanging in there while we took that short break. Now back to America Free Radio with host Brooks Agnew here at Revolution Radio.
All right. Thank you, Revolution Radio for that great station identification. You guys are getting better and better every day. Got to keep raising the bar because we got a lot of people out there listening. A lot of competition for this radio hour. So those of you listening on Revolution Radio, we love you. We would be nowhere without you. We're glad you're listening. Those of you that are watching by video, this is going to be very easy for you because we're already looking at my website, which is americafreeradio.com. We are going to visit my store. Easy to do. We're going to go to the homepage first, brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. You'll know you're in the right place because it'll say I'm Brooks Agnew. There's my picture. It's very simple, very simple. Now, we're going to skip ahead here, and we're going to go to the shop because there are a couple changes that have been made, and I want to keep you up to date. Go to the health and aging section. You all know how to get there. First thing you're going to notice is you can still get ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine for yourself without a prescription. You know how to follow the instructions. It's very simple. We have had, and I have to extend my apologies, after we built the new trade route, once the India Post embargo went against the United States, it took us about the better part of 2 weeks to put together a new trade route. Not easy to do at all. But we got it done. And the issue we're having is some of the orders, like if you're ordering 2 or 3 or 10 boxes at a time, some of them are being short shipped. In other words, you order 2, you get 1. The other ones will go out, I promise. We found the issue. We know what's causing it. We're going to get that fixed, I promise. Trust us. We've never done you wrong. Now, the other thing that you're going to notice is, yes, finally, fenbendazole is back. Okay, we're no longer flipping you back over to Amazon to buy Chinese fenbendazole. This is the real stuff, comes straight from the manufacturer. You cannot beat the price anywhere. $45, I think, for the 222 milligram, and $54. I think it's $54 for the 444. You can't beat that price anywhere. So you're going to get it wholesale. People are already picking up on it. We've sold a lot this week, but I wanted to let you know that it's out there. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is, yes, the buy now buttons are right here, but look at this NIH data sheet. You see this NIH data sheet? This is interesting because this talks about how fenbendazole is used to fight cancer. And this is the government's website. So I'm taking you here. You can read up all about it. Here's all the citations. We have a lot. I would say a couple thousand customers that are treating their own cancer with fenbendazole. This is the best stuff that you can get. Okay. There are 4 different ways that it fights cancer, apoptosis, and among other things. Try it. See if it works for you. This is 99.9% pure. The C of A is really, really good. Also known as Panicure. This is where it's done. All right. Also, True Niagen. I still do it. I've been doing it now 8 years. The Insulis right now is temporarily sold out, but it's going to be restored again this next week. I'm out myself. That's why I'm kind of saying I'd like to see it. If you click the order now button, it's going to take you to my Abetu, which is the maker of Insulis. And if you hit the shop now button, you're going to see it's now in stock. It did say sold out right here. Now it's not. So it is in stock. Make sure to use the discount code Brooks. Use the discount code Brooks, and you'll be able to get it. Okay? All right. Let's see here. Of course, the Himalaya toothpaste. The Blue Boost, which gives you that laser focus methylene blue without the stains. And it's all right here on the website. Okay, let's get back to it because we got stuff we want to talk about here. By the way, I hope you got all that stuff on the judges. I wanted to put this thing together, like how bad is the reign of the judges? Who is most of the problem? How many lawsuits have actually been filed, and how many judges are we actually talking about here? Well, it's 667 or something like that. It's doable. It's about 50-50 Democrats, Republicans. I wish they weren't lifetime appointments. That's what I wish. I wish they were like 20-year terms or something. And I wish there were requirements like you have to have served as a judge for 10 years so we can look at your judgments, right? So we can look at, it's not necessarily the experience that you have. Okay, I know what the judge forms are and all of that, but we can look at your judgments. We can see how you have made your mind up on the cases and make a decision based on that instead of just, oh, you're from Trinidad? Okay, no problem. We like you. We want you in there. All right. By the way, Foxhole loaded up. Got so many people in there, I can't count them all. And I appreciate all you chatters. James Bright's out there as well on YouTube. Tupac Sugar's out there. Good points. All good points. Stay with it, guys. Stay with it. So there's something else going on in last week, last Wednesday, I had a story which I called The Western Hemisphere is in Trouble. And the Monroe Doctrine was originally set up to try to kind of divide the world in half, north to south, using the big oceans, right? So basically what happened is we told Europe to stay out of our hemisphere. They're in it because of, Greenland and all that controversy that goes with that. Trump's trying to solve that. But also because of Cuba and because of Venezuela. We're seeing issues that last week, a week ago yesterday, as a matter of fact, Putin signed agreements with Cuba and with Venezuela that allows him to move weaponry, Russian-made weaponry, into these areas, which are ostensibly our enemies. Now, I'm not saying that they're, our go-to-war enemies, but they're definitely not our allies. Maduro doesn't like us. Castro or whoever's running Cuba right now doesn't like us. So, in a way, we kind of brought it on ourselves because we're sending weaponry into Ukraine. And Putin basically said, if you keep sending weaponry into Ukraine, which they're using against Russia, we're going to send weaponry into your enemies and see how you like it. At the time he made the statement, what if Mexico wanted to take back Texas? You wouldn't be too happy about us sending them weapons to do that, would you? See? Yeah. So the agreement makes it kind of sticky because NATO has made a decision. And this is, I guess we could say NATO's made the decision, but in a way, NATO really doesn't do anything without our approval or even without our head fake. And so this is kind of like us doing it. NATO has approved the proposal to supply, I know you're not going to like this, to supply Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. I know it's a big deal. These are usually launched by subs or destroyers or cruisers or frigates, right? It's not something that we give away. We don't say, here's a bunch of Tomahawks, launch them as you see fit. We control the codes on the Tomahawks. So American crews go with the American missiles. Now, this puts us in a very strange situation because NATO has put us into a strange situation because now Putin can say, if one of these Tomahawk missiles strikes a target 1,500 kilometers into Russia, which is a significant increase on the range of anything, and does damage, kills people, destroys property, starts a fire, whatever, we're responsible. Not just the U.S. State Department, you and me, we're responsible. Yeah. So, yes, of course it's going to enhance Kiev's long-range strike capabilities, but they're not responsible with that capability. They haven't shown responsibility with that capability. Senior alliance official confirmed the reports, describing the missiles as a complement to Ukraine's existing arsenal. It isn't a decisive shift in the war, I would say, but it is incrementally crossing a line, okay? Incrementally crossing a line. Military analysts say this could disrupt supply lines, command centers, air bases from the front lines in Ukraine. It's a bad deal. The issue at hand is that these cruise missiles are offensive weapons of war and they are flown by American tech teams. The agreements signed with Cuba and Venezuela a week ago by Putin put our hemisphere at risk of offensive attack by our enemies supplied with Russian-made weapons. It is an escalation that is unnecessary. It doesn't tilt the balance and force people to the table like tariffs, force people to the table to talk about trade agreements. This doesn't force anybody to do anything except escalate. And I just think it's a move in the wrong direction. I'll leave that there. I will cover more of that on Sunday. Be sure to stay tuned to America Free Radio because Sunday night at 8 p.m., we start the news week. So the news week doesn't start at 6 a.m. on Monday morning on Breitbart Radio. It doesn't start there. It starts the night before at 8 p.m. on America Free Radio. They use our talking points. They use our reporting, our analysis to kick off the week. And many of the predictions that we make on Sunday night are dead nuts on the money. It's a great program. You need to stay tuned to it. All right, what else is going on? Well, anybody look at Barack Obama's library lately? I know, like, what the F, right? Have you ever seen a Purina dog food factory? Yeah, they all look the same. They have this big, tall concrete tower because that's how they kind of precipitate the kibbles, I guess, and turn it into a continuous manufacturing operation. I'm sure it smells so good inside there. But it almost looks like a zombie apocalypse building. It's very stark and gray on the outside. Doesn't have any windows. It's not like you could scale it or get inside of it. It looks weird, right? Even the geometry of it is weird. Well, Trump wants to build a library, and it's going to be fabulous. It's going to be fabulous. I'll put it this way. Just the property for the library is $46 million. 3 acres. Yeah, it's like premium property in very high rent district. Well, it's kind of going to make you sick because it goes on with the last story that I had. A Florida judge has temporarily halted the transfer of land in Miami to President Trump's planned presidential library. Yep. Florida Circuit Judge Mavel Ruiz made the ruling yesterday after Marvin Dunn, an activist and chronicler of local Black history, He filed a lawsuit earlier this month claiming that Miami-Dade College's Board of Trustees violated the state's government in the Sunshine Law by not providing enough notice for its special meeting in which it voted to give up the land. So Ruiz, judge for Florida's 11th Judicial Circuit, found the board most likely violated the state government's transparency law. In addition, she said lawyers working on the deed paperwork should temporarily pause their work, according to the New York Times. Yeah, you guys have to stop because it's Trump's library and we just can't allow this to happen. I'm sure there were a lot of lawsuits to stop the atrocity known as Barack Obama's library. Not. The college is a state-run school. It owned the property before gifting it to the state. Its board voted September 23rd to transfer the land to the Foundation for the Presidential Library. This is not an easy decision, Ruiz said, when explaining her ruling from the bench, finding that the college didn't give reasonable notice to the public ahead of the vote. And this is not the case, at least for this court, rooted in politics. The property is nearly 3 acres. It's valued at, $67 million, according to a 2025 assessment by the Miami-Dade County property appraiser. Before the September meeting, an agenda was released that said the college's board would consider transferring property to a state fund overseen by DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and the Florida cabinet, but didn't detail which property or for what purpose. Also, unlike the board's other meetings this year, the September 23rd meeting was not live streamed. I guess they didn't want to get sued by, Big Tish, that they'd undervalued the property or overvalued the property or some bullshit. Anyway, a week after the meeting, DeSantis and other top GOP officials voted to transfer the land again, deeding it to the Foundation for the Trump's Library. The 3 trustees who lead the foundation are Eric Trump, Tiffany Trump's husband, Michael Bolos, and the president's attorney, James Kiley. The college's lawyer, Jesus Suarez, argued that MDC followed the law and questioned Dunn's political motivation for filing the case, as do I. I question the political motivation as well. Trump's got 3.5 years to begin building this library and get it done, get his memoirs moved into it. I think it would be fabulous, absolutely fabulous to tour the Trump Library in Miami. I'll bet it'd be the most amazing thing ever. There's no requirement under Florida law that there be specificity on notice, because those trustees can come into that room and talk to each other about whatever they want to. And that's the sunshine right there. That's the sunshine. Nobody's keeping any secrets from anybody. Dunn's attorneys argued that no one who wasn't already aware of the deal could have known what the board would do. People have a right to know what they're going to decide to do when the transaction is so significant, so unusual, and deprives the students and the college of this land. Oh, really? Deprives them of the land. What an ass. The MDC's general counsel, Javier Le Soto, testified that the college is still in the process of finalizing the land transfer. He estimated that delays caused by an injunction would cost the college about $300,000. Therein lies the motivation. Let's cost them as much money as we possibly can. Let's make sure the Trump Library never opens. At the rate that Barack Obama's library is going, Trump's library will be open for business and will have a line around the block for the next 5 years. Wow. What do you think about that? I know everywhere they turn, a federal judge is stepping in saying, nope, you can't do that. Nope, you can't. No, you can't do that. That's a good question, Washaki Win. I bring it up because I want you to be aware of it. If Trump is involved in getting these Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, why? Why gamble in that way? Why move the chess pieces up the offensive ladder? Why not push for peace? Why not de-escalate? Huh? Why not say, look, oh, yes, I wanted to bring this up because Melania Trump had made a big deal about having a back channel with Trump and had talked to him about the kids. Remember the kids in return to the... Okay. It's more than a matter of semantics, but let me make this clear to you. The children that Melania Trump was talking about, yes, they were Ukrainian children, but they were ethnic Russians. They were ethnic Russian children. Now, think back to February of 23. All right, let's just think back. So, Putin is going to cross the border in the coldest month of the year. And he's going to build this convoy, which is kind of aimed at Kiev. But think of the numbers here, what we're talking about. We're talking about, let's say, 15,000 kids, just to make it round. It could be 19,000. It could be 10,000. Let's just say 15,000. I know it's close to the ballpark. 15,000 children and a bus, a big bus that you could drive in the wintertime for 800 miles is 50 passengers. And that doesn't include food and blankets and everything to, let 50 kids sleep on that bus. I've been on school trips before, 50 passenger buses. It's not that comfortable. Not that comfortable. But let's say 50. 15,000 kids were picked up from orphanages in Ukraine. These are all ethnic Russian kids who were orphaned by Victoria Nuland's almost 10-year war against Eastern Ukraine. Their parents are dead. They're orphans. Their parents are dead. They're orphans. That's the definition of orphan. Your parents are dead, right? And so these kids are stuffed into orphanages, and orphanages are enormous. 3-4 floors, 6-7 kids to a room. It is horrendous. I saw some of the advanced footage that Patrick Lancaster sent to us. It was awful. I mean, they were just awful, these orphanages. Trump went and picked the kids up, and he took them to Moscow, to their relatives in Moscow, where they've been living ever since, 2 years. Now, Melania opens a back channel to Putin and says, look, some of these kids have closer relatives in Ukraine. Yes, they were stuck in orphanages, which is where you got the kids. But now things have stabilized in those areas, and they've been rebuilt, and the people are back up and up on their feet, and they would like to have their relatives' kids back in their households. And Putin said, fine, no problem. I just don't want those kids sold all over the world the way they were being sold. I don't want them trafficked. I don't want them experimented on by Victoria Nuland's bioweapons labs. You got it? I don't want them organ harvested. It pisses me off. All right? Because what was evident right off the get-go to this very day, Putin is not fighting for land. If he was fighting for land, by God, he would have it. He's not fighting for land. He's fighting for people. He's fighting for people, for the ethnic Russian people. What was the announcement he made when he crossed the border? After Jake Sullivan sort of gave us the spoiler alert that night. He was going to denazify Ukraine. I am here to denazify Ukraine. And what did he do? 3 weeks, 6 weeks later, it was done. The Azov battalion was wiped out. Wiped out. Now, it's true the Ukrainians tried to take back property that belonged to the ethnic Russians, these 5 states. They've been doing terrible terroristic things since. But Putin restored the water to Crimea. He built the Kerch Strait Bridge, which is the 8th wonder of the world. Unbelievable structure. And he's helping to rebuild these 5 states. He's running the largest nuclear power plant. Not Putin isn't running it, but the ethnic Russians that live in that area are running, the DPR, running the largest nuclear power plant in Europe safely against all odds, against enemies. And these are the outside facts that we can see. So I wanted to bring that up to you, that this back channel that Melania Trump had, and she was talking about Ukrainian children being returned to Ukrainian families. It's true. It's true. But they were Ukrainian by location. They're Russian by ethnicity. Right? Ukrainian by location, Russian by ethnicity. In other words, nothing is inconsistent here. Nothing. It's all working just as planned. It's kind of interesting, though. Think how many buses. 15,000 kids. 50 passenger buses. Wow. Wow. That's 150 hundreds, right? 15,000's 300 buses. And that's just one trip. What if he made multiple trips? It's a big deal. And none of the buses broke down. None of the buses were attacked. None of the kids died. They're all safe. They're all being cared for. They're all being educated and fed by Russian relatives. And they're not being sold, and they're not being trafficked, and they're not being experimented on in bioweapons labs, and they're not being organ harvested, which is what was happening under Victoria Nuland. Devastating. Absolutely devastating. So I wonder about this escalation. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to see Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine. It doesn't make any sense to put Tomahawk missiles in Ukraine. Ukraine does not need longer distance strike capabilities against Russia. That's not the point. What is it? Akin to the U.S. government killing Mexican Americans at the border. Putin wanted that to stop. I agree with Putin. Yeah, it's true. We don't want that to happen. All right, what's going on in L.A.? Oh, my gosh, I'm so glad I am from California. Wow. The L.A. Karen just blows my mind, doesn't it you? Wow. My old stomping grounds where I used to surf, where I used to play, ride my 10-speed, learn to drive, all that. It's all vacant. It's all torn apart, and none of it's being rebuilt because of her, because of the Karen. And it drives me nuts. But now the Karen has done something unbelievable. She has committed another blatant act of nullification. It blows my effing mind. The board overstepped its authority and declared state resources are to be used to prevent federal law from being applied to LA to illegals being arrested and deported. That's an act of nullification. That's an act of sedition, right? The Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors voted in favor of declaring an emergency. They declared an emergency. Special funding from the state, an emergency over the Trump administration's immigration raids in the area. Federal law being enforced in your neighborhood is not a freaking emergency. And they voted 4-1. 4-1. At least one of them had sense. Wow. Federal law enforcement continues to target illegal aliens in LA area. The city was the site of anti-immigration and customs enforcement riots earlier this year. They sent in the National Guard, put the kibosh on that. So Supervisor Janice Hahn said this: "We have residents that are afraid to leave their homes." Well, I guess you do. If they're illegals and they're residing there, they should be afraid to leave their homes. We have constituents. Really? You have illegals that are constituents? That's interesting. Contacting my office because their family members never came home and they don't know if they've been taken by ICE or where they've been taken. Well, if they're illegals, they could have been deported. That's logical, right? Logical. We have entire families who are destitute because their fathers or mothers have been taken from their workplaces and they have no way to pay their rent or put food on their table. Then go home. Go home. Take the $2,500 and the free ticket and go home. Get out. Go home. That's the whole reason why the system is set up the way it is set up. The governor and the LA Karen have been among the most high-profile critics of the immigration crackdown, although they have thus far done little to dissuade the administration from its current policy. In other words, they're doing a lot of clucking, but we don't see any eggs. They are estimated 2.5 million illegals in the LA area alone, and that many of them have voted in state and national elections. That's a lot. In a city of 10.5 million people as a metro, 25% of them are illegal, and they have voted in local and national elections. I'm sorry, Earth Explorers. This is what I voted for. This is what I voted for. It's what you voted for. Of course, I don't care if people want to come here and build a better life for themselves. Everybody does. Do it legally. Do it legally. Can we absorb them? Hell yeah. Hell yes, we can. Bring your skills. Bring your skills, and we will make you a citizen or get you a green card, and you can work away. Work away. Don't come illegally. Don't cheat the system. And then vote in our elections. It's not what we want. All right, what else has happened? I'm trying to catch up because I missed Sunday because my truck I ran over something in the road. It flipped up and caught one of the hoses in my truck, and there went all the cooling water. So what you gonna do? Wait till the morning, call a tow truck, and miss the program. I hated it. The U.S. Department of Energy, also a very corrupt organization inside our government, is going to be returning to the American taxpayer $13 billion. That's no small chunk of change, people. $13 billion in unobligated wasteful spending that was originally intended for former President Joe Biden's climate agenda, his green scam. Larry Behrens from Power of the Future said that by returning $13 billion, the Department of Energy under President Trump is showing respect for taxpayers and a willingness to end funding for programs that just don't work. Why keep pouring the money down the rat hole if it doesn't work? Well, because that's what government has always done. We throw our money up a horse's ass. No, we don't. We wise up. This organization called Power of the Future is a nonprofit. They are dedicated to Americans who work in reliable energy sources. Behrens told the Center Square that the Department of Energy's action is a welcome step toward restoring accountability and letting these markets, not the bureaucrats, determine our energy future. The American people made it crystal clear at the ballot box that they don't want another taxpayer dollar wastefully spent on green scam pet projects. Diana Ferget Roth of the Heritage Foundation said that with the return of the $13 billion, the deficit will be lower than otherwise. And I think that's what they should do with the money. Don't send it to me. Why? Don't spend it. Put it back in the budget. Pay off the debt. Frigate Roth said that the department should comb through its budget, see what other projects can be accomplished by the private sector, and then end those projects. The department should also look through its regulations, see which ones impose costs on businesses and families. For instance, the DOE would eliminate appliance regulations that prevent companies from producing the gas stoves, the boilers, water heaters that people want to buy. The Department of Energy announced today its intention to return more than $13 billion in unobligated funds initially appropriated in advance the previous administration's wasteful Green New Scam agenda. The department said its announcement reflects the Trump administration's commitment to halt wasteful spending and refocus the department to its core mission. Of course, the Democrats are going to get a federal judge to stop this because they want that $13 billion. They need that $13 billion. They're going to reassign that $13 billion, which they were going to do anyway, to Democrat races up and down the ticket. Trump signed the Working Families Tax Cut into law early this year. It directed the Energy Department to rein in bloated federal spending and expedite the return of unobligated funds to us. Back in the budget, back in the bank. Secretary of Energy Chris Wright said this: the American people elected President Trump largely because of the last administration's reckless, Granholm, crazy spending on climate policies that fed inflation and failed to provide any real benefit to the American people. Just to let you know, in the last few days that Granholm was there, they shoved out the door $83 billion. $83 billion to nothing. I can almost guarantee you that the recipients of these $83 billion had to write hellacious kickback checks. Can I prove it? Yeah, probably. He says those days are over now that Trump is president. Keep in mind, it was Biden's DOE that funneled billions to an electric vehicle charging program. They didn't build a single charging station. Over $6 billion in EV charging funding has now been flagged as wasteful. Frigate Roth informed the reporters that, in general, states with the most expensive electricity require renewables, except for, of course, for Alaska. And states with the least expensive electricity do not require renewables. Give you an idea how efficient it really is. Not. States should prioritize affordable, resilient, reliable energy. This means getting rid of the requirements that a share of the electricity be produced with wind and solar. We got a lot of solar farms here in North Carolina, but I know a lot about solar panels. Used them in my electric vehicles. I researched them to hell and back. They have a lifespan of about 22 to 25 years, depending on the weather they're exposed to. The electronics that support them, the combiner boxes, what are called microconverters, which get very hot in hot areas, they don't last. These generate a power signal that now has to be blended into the grid. The grid, as you know, is three-phase. It's three-phase, which means the solar power being generated as single phase has to be inserted into the grid so that it balances the three phases. You can't just put it all on one phase and hope to use it. It doesn't work that way. Plus, if the sun doesn't shine, it's cloudy, it's rainy, they're dusty, it's dark. You don't have that electricity at your disposal. Hawaii is having a big problem because they have lots of sunshine for sure. They just have it at the wrong time of day. What does that mean? Well, they have the peak sunshine between noon and 2:30 in the afternoon. But when they really need the electricity is between 3 and 6 in the afternoon. They don't have the sunshine. So in order to make it function for Hawaii, we're not talking a big market here, not a big market at all. In order to work, Hawaii has to have a storage bank. They have to store the energy that they made from noon to 2:30 so they can use it between 3 and 6:30. And that triples the price of the system. Plus, you're talking about deep cycling these batteries. When you deep cycle these batteries, these storage system batteries, they only last for 3 years. That means millions and millions of dollars worth of batteries have to be replaced every 3 years in order to keep the system at peak optimization. And add to that the fact that the batteries that have to be replaced, the ones that are pulled out, they're not recycled. They're not recycled. They're just tossed in the trash, tossed in the landfill in Hawaii, or they're hauled off at even more expense to a landfill not in Hawaii. You understand? It just doesn't work. Unless you want to change the hours of work in Hawaii, which you can't do. People do shit between 2:30 and 6:30, right? They do stuff. They have air conditioning loads. They go out to eat. They do their laundry. They do stuff between 2:30 and 6 in the afternoon. You have to have electricity to do that. Well, the solar panels are on the wrong freaking island to be able to do that for them because the sun has already gone past its peak. You see the problem. You see the problem as well as I do. All right, what else is happening? Oh, yes. The money in the war. Right. They haul the batteries to China and then they throw them in the ocean. Right. No, they're not biodegradable at all. Now, lead batteries, yes. Lead acid batteries or gel batteries, yeah, absolutely you can recycle those. But you can't recycle a lithium iron phosphate battery. Not recyclable. Trust me, I know. I threw away $250,000 worth of them. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Hey, good to see you out there, Bad Monkey. Good. Bad Monkey, no banana, right? Aloha from Makawa'au, Maui. Awesome. How'd you get those flowers in there? That's pretty cool. For the past year, and I've been trying to keep you abreast of this as much as I could, the Trump administration has been raiding and stopping the piggy bank for the global syndicate, right? We have watched it. Started with Doge coming in and taking out U.S. aid, right? All that stuff. Act Blue, although although they're estimated to launder $1.3 billion in foreign money to Democrat elections this year alone. Planned Parenthood, many other slush funds that have traditionally bought votes, judges, other government officials, they've shut it down. So the United States is in the process of compiling a list of organizations. And they're very aggressively going after this. And they are not without resources. All these people that they're arresting, they get their phones, they get their bank records, they see where the money's coming from, including these nonprofits. And they could be funding domestic terror activities even. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is on the job. I wouldn't want him on my trail. No, sir, I would not want him on my trail. We believe people have the right to free speech. They have a right to organize. They have a right to protest, but they have to do it peacefully. They cannot embrace violence. And we have seen it. And we have seen it since the terrible day 2 years ago, the anti-Semitism and the bias that came out after October 7th. And many of these organizations have been financed by nonprofits. And guess what, people? That's going to stop. And we are going to, as they always say, follow the money. This is what Scott Bessent said. The Treasury has already started to put together a list of these funding networks. I think they're going to be very surprised how much money is in there, how much money they're dealing with. It remains to be uncovered how much of the funding comes from overseas, how much is being supported by U.S. nonprofits. So Charlie Kirk's death set this whole thing off. That's the catalyst that turned on the machine. And we are determined not only to honor him, but to keep our country safe and to ensure freedom of speech on both sides. As conservatives, we cannot be afraid to go out and speak. I know people are canceling speeches. They have to bring down the size of the rallies. President Trump was millimeters away from death and has not been deterred. And we're not going to be deterred. We'll follow the money behind the violent domestic networks to expose terrorists and bring such people to justice. Very powerful statements by Mr. Bessent. The order instructs the Treasury Secretary to identify and disrupt financial networks deemed to be funding political violence and domestic terrorism. It also asks the IRS Commissioner to make sure that tax-exempt entities do not fund such activities directly or indirectly. They're going to lose their tax-exempt status, and then they evaporate. They go away. The guidance will also identify behaviors, fact patterns, recurrent motivations common to organizations and entities that coordinate these acts in order to stop political violence before it occurs. Of course, Trump on September 22nd designated Antifa to be a domestic terrorist organization. This is a big deal. It puts them in a different category and allows us to do things legally we could not do before. The president is invoking political violence, which we all condemn, as an excuse to target nonprofits and activities. This is what they're squawking. They say it's shameful and it's dangerous. Oh yes, it's very dangerous. It's very shameful. And they need to keep doing it. Need to bring these people down. And let's see. Oh, one last thing, the critical racist theory. We talked earlier about Action Jackson saying that black people are handicapped, that they're equivalent to the American with Disabilities Act, handicapped, because they don't know how to vote. And so they need to have a special black voting district so they can have only black candidates running. Well, today the Supreme Court decided to limit the use of the Voting Rights Act to force states to draw electoral districts favorable to blacks. The court's 6 conservative justices, to one degree or another, seemed like they would vote to electively strike down a black majority House district in Louisiana because it relied too heavily on race. In fact, the people that are putting forth the idea are totally focused on race. They're saying race is the primary reason why they want to do it, because white Democrats will not vote in black Democrats or blacks. And I don't know if that's true or not, but where is it written that a white person cannot represent a black person? Nowhere. In fact, that should be allowed. Such an outcome would mark a fundamental change in the voting rights law, the centerpiece legislation of the civil rights movement that succeeded in opening the ballot box to black Americans and reducing persistent discrimination in voting. A ruling for Louisiana could open the door for legislatures to redraw congressional maps across the South, potentially boosting Republican electoral prospects by eliminating majority black and Latino districts that tend to favor Democrats. 2 years ago, the court by a 5-4 vote affirmed by a ruling that found a a likely violation of the Voting Rights Act in a similar case over Alabama's political boundaries. Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Kavanaugh joined the 3 of their more liberal colleagues in the outcome, but Roberts and Kavanaugh stuck a different tone yesterday, or today actually, especially in their questions to civil rights lawyer Janai Nelson. Oh, you should have heard her. You should have heard her. Wow, what a racist. Woo! Roberts suggested that the Alabama decision was highly focused on its facts and should not be read to require a similar outcome in Louisiana. The court's liberal justices focused on the history of the Voting Rights Act, a mid-decade battle over congressional redistricting already is playing out across the nation. Trump began urging Texas and other GOP-controlled states to redraw their lines to make it easier for the GOP to hold its narrow majority in the House. Actually, what they were doing is correcting the lines back to what they were when the Democrats began to redistrict it to favor themselves, which created the districts by which Jasmine Crotchet was allowed in. The court has separately given state legislatures wide berth to gerrymander for political purposes, subject only to review by state Supreme Courts. In the first, Roberts described the district as a snake that stretches more than 200 miles to link parts of Shreveport, Alexandria, Lafayette, and Baton Rouge areas. The court fought over this for 3 years, but the changes effectively maintained the status quo of 5 Republican-leaning majority, while majority white districts and 1 Democrat-leaning majority black district. Civil rights advocates won a lower court ruling that the districts likely discriminate against black voters. I don't know about that. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting year. See how these things shape up. Remember, Earth Explorers, to go out and look for the good in each other and help it grow a little bit every day. And before long, you will have saved the planet. Go out and do great things. We will see you right here on America Free Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.